When I was a young nerd, much like other young nerds, I dreamt of making video games when I got older. It's a good thing I didn't, because I'm pretty sure if I did, the resulting abomination would be like the crap you see on this episode of A Week at the Indies, and I'd have to watch in despair as some talentless schmuck ripped apart my games on YouTube. As luck would have it, I get to play the role of said talentless schmuck and tell you, with no pride in my voice, that I have absolutely zero games to recommend this week. Instead, I have 5 in the show us on the dollar where they touched you no zone, and 2 that at the very least didn't suck as badly as the rest. But because I have no interest in only talking about crappy games when, as a gamer, I want everyone to actually enjoy this amazing medium, I'll put a game at the end of this episode that you should check out if you like good games. So sit back, suffer through this ride with me, and hope the light at the end of the tunnel comes quickly, and isn't an oncoming train. Oh, crappy zombie games, what would we do without you? Here to take the first fall this week is Geriatrix Zombie City. Somehow, after all this time, people still believe in the idea that putting the shambling undead into an almost unplayable game will make everything better. Like putting an orange Kool-Aid packet into a cup of goat urine and hoping for the best. Sorry buddy, it still tastes like pee. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, Geriatrix. It's butt. Half the game is this boring stroll that may or may not involve shooting a bunch of zombies while taking occasional shots from your inhaler, while the other half has you crossing a heavily used road. I guess the zombie apocalypse has no effect on traffic? Oh, before I forget, to cross the road, you press up or down on the left stick to move forward or back, and left or right on the right stick to steer. It's the most unintuitive movement system in the history of overhead gaming, and is made even worse when holding right and down moves you right instead of left, like any other game ever made using tank controls. Or, you know, a car. Go home, bad game, you're drunk. Next up is Match Frenzy, a game I'm incredibly hesitant to put in the puzzle genre. Puzzle games imply some sort of intelligence requirement. This game just has you stacking colored blocks until you randomly get one that flashes. There are no combos because loose blocks don't fall and the flashing blocks don't stay on screen. It's just a race to see who cares enough not to turn the game off first. The only difficulty is in discerning between white and gray blocks. Seriously, who makes these decisions? Our third game to snag a big no stamp on its metaphorical forehead is a platformer by the name of Exploding Imp. Now, it's difficult to get me to completely write off a platformer. The genre has been beaten into my head since near the beginning of my gaming lifetime, and I can usually find some sort of enjoyment in even the worst of them. And Exploding Imp isn't even near the worst of them. It just has too many things that I don't like. For starters, look at this instruction screen. I've modded electronics with less difficulty and instructions than this. Jumping is very floaty, moving on the ground to line up an attack with your T-Rex style arms is nigh impossible, and collision with anything is such a non-event that you barely even notice it happening. But the worst offender in all this, aside from the game not being very fun, is how busy the screen is. Your goal is to destroy all the flowers in a level in order to advance, but everything just kinda blends together, and even with the magical flower finding button, I still can't tell where anything is. Sorry, Exploding Imp, but you're going out with a whimper, not a bang. Still with me? Good. The fourth game to suck like someone just slipped at a Benjamin is Starwings Mission Command. Unlike our last game, here we have one that's too easy, too simple, and too boring. As you can see, we have a shoot 'em up where you control a small mercenary squadron of ships doing various things, be it escort missions or taking down other fighters. What moved this game from a forgettable meh into an almost laughable kind of bad is the voice acting during unskippable dialogue. Seriously, it's like Bill and Ted quoting Shakespeare bad. It's worse than 80s anime and kung fu dubbing, and if that was the aim, then kudos to the team because you hit and destroyed your mark. I almost bought the game just to laugh at it. I guess it might be worth the 80 points, but it also means you have to suffer through the gameplay, and that's really not worth the time, let alone the money. Most of the missions during the trial are shorter than the accompanying dialogue, and I can't tell if that's better or worse than the alternative. Until I can figure that out, you're better off looking elsewhere for shmup goodness. Finally, the last game to fall out of the don't play me tree and hit every branch on the way down is Steel Champions. And believe me, it hurts to say that, because I was kinda looking forward to a Punch-Out clone. Instead, what we get is broken English and one of the more button-mashy games I've played in recent memory. Normally a game like this involves memorization and fast reactions. Instead, you just mash the punch buttons and block when the opposing robot makes some sort of movement. Dodging doesn't give you any advantage in counterattacking, as opponents can react immediately. Considering it's a port of a mobile game, I'm not entirely surprised it's about as dumbed down as you can get for a Punch-Out clone, but I just can't imagine a reason why anyone would buy this, so... Sadly, that probably worked on more people than it should have, but because I know you're a classy individual, I know you'll skip Steel Chest. Stop that! Moving on now, please. Alright, the first of only 2 games to earn a couple more pluses than minuses this week is Blitzkrieg, a game the developer labels as Super Smash Strategy. Blitzkrieg draws and takes aim at being a fast-paced, real-time strategy game that can be played by up to 4 people on one screen. It kinda hits the mark too. Kinda. The controls seem easy enough with face buttons each spawning different troops, and the triggers selecting and deploying your troops to different parts of the map in an effort to take checkpoints and eventually destroying your opponent's base. But being simple also takes some options away. For instance, you can only select giant clusters of troops, so moving a tank or some infantry from one group to another to help protect a base isn't possible. I also have no idea what's happening when I build up a large force and just throw it at the equally menacing opposition. There are a lot of sounds, and eventually only one of us has troops left, of which I can only guess the specific makeup of the unit. The biggest complaint is that when things get hectic, the frame rate and game speed plummet. It feels like the game drops inputs during this as well, making the game less functional. Really, Blitzkrieg barely survives based solely on the fact that it's a fun idea done well enough here to show promise, and with a lot more polish is something I'd enjoy dragging out frequently, but as it is, it walks a thin line between amateur fun and forgettable. And the last of the maybe-sos is this retro bullet hell, Pester. Hey, wait a minute, this music sounds kind of familiar. Yep, that's right. Pester and Blitzkrieg use the same music producer. This is actually pretty common on the XBLIG marketplace, with people licensing their music out for free. And I'd rather this than no music at all, but it's still weird when it happens. Anyway, back to the game. Pester tries to blend a more modern style of shooter, the bullet hell, with an incredibly retro look, including the option for scan lines and an arcade monitor bend, and functionally it succeeds. It also includes 2 different modes and a large amount of modifiers for the game, including the ability to use 2 different ships at once. Where Pester falls short is the presentation. The giant sidebars take up more room than the game itself, multiple spelling errors make the game look less professional, and I found myself mistaking the gray bullets for gray coins on a few occasions. All this in addition to the fact that it just doesn't pop out at you. So while Pester won't be taking the place of Eternum anytime soon and has its quirks, for fans of vertical scrolling shmups it might be worth a trial and purchase. And that's it for the newer indie releases, but as promised, I can't send you home without at least one game that would fit into the yes column on this week's report card. So I dug back a few months and found a vertical scrolling shooter that is so late 90s arcade influenced, it should have its price listed in quarters. Snops Attack Zombie Defense is one of those games that comes out and makes you wonder why any other 2D game on the indie marketplace has difficulty running. Seriously, look at this. There are times when literally 100 little zombie cats are hurtling toward you, pink bullets and all, while you're unleashing colorful hell over scrolling backgrounds and flashing numbers, and the console just slams down a beer and says, "It's cool, bro, I got this." In Snops, you guide dog pilot Snops on a mission to defeat the relentless horde of zombie cats and alien jellyfish, with nothing but a plane, your reflexes, and about 5 billion bullets. Oh, and a little help from some pigs, and something about reality television. Really, the storyline makes no sense whatever, but if that's something you care about while playing this game, then I don't know you anymore, because you used to be a person who liked to have fun, and I'm pretty sure that's what this game is made of. Fun. Snops Attack is also loaded with a small assortment of helper power-ups that hang around your ship and either fire at the enemy or absorb bullets, along with the standard power-ups to upgrade your weapons or refill your shields and bombs. Defeating enough enemies fills up a hyper bar that, when used, fills the screen with enough firepower to take out a small planet. Finally, the game has 4 difficulty settings, which help with replayability as a playthrough on normal difficulty lasts just over half an hour and was downed in my first time through. But, as with all crazy bullet-filled shoot-em-ups, once around the block isn't going to be enough, and like nearly any short but sweet game, you might just hit start right after the closing credits and see if you can't beat the game at a higher difficulty, or beat your last score. Unfortunately, the game doesn't have any sort of leaderboards, local or online, which is the one knock I have against it. But when the only thing I don't like about a game can be fixed with a pen and a piece of paper, I think that's a sign that I like it, and do so enough to highly recommend it at the 240 points, or 12 quarters, it's so easily worth. And on that happy note, I leave you until next week. Thanks for watching, I'm Hogosha, and I'll see you next time.